All right, welcome to Math 155, integrated review for 6.5. So in this lecture video, we're going to take a look at how we're going to work with formula. So what we're going to do is learn how to solve for a very specific variable. All right, so let me show you how to do this. So we are still kind of solving equation. It just there is no like term to combine, things like that. So the technique is still the same. So for example, this is a trapezoid. Draw a trapezoid has an area of 20 square meter. The height is 4 meter and one of the two bases, B, is 3 meters long. What's the length of the other base? So this formula, the area is 20. All right. Area of a trapezoid is half times the height times the two bases. So the picture is right here. So the problem kind of already told me that one of the base, B, is already 3. What is the length of the other base? So that means I need to solve for C. Solve for the base C. So without substitution, solve the formula for the unknown variable in the terms of the known variables. So so we don't have to do any substitution in here. We just need to solve for C. All right. So why don't I come back to do this one? Okay, I'm gonna do other ones as well. So let's just keep that up there real quick. So I'm gonna kind of jump around here a little bit. Okay. All right. If an object is shot upward with the initial velocity v sub null. So v sub null is initial velocity. In feet per second, the velocity v in feet per second is given by this formula, where t stands for the time in seconds. Find the initial velocity. Find the initial velocity of an object if the velocity after 3 seconds is 15. So 3 means the t, 15 feet per second, okay, which is the velocity. The velocity is 15, so we can substitute 15 for v. So this particular example, we can substitute and solve for the unknown. So 15 is the velocity, set it equal to initial velocity. That's what the problem wants me to find, the initial velocity, minus 32 times the time, 3. All right, so solve for v sub null. All right, so this is just like a regular linear equation. My variable term, v sub null, is positive, so I'm going to let it stay. So that means I can move the negative 32 times 3 over to the other side. But what I'm going to do here is figure out what negative 32 times 3 is, which is negative 64. So I'm going to move my negative 64 to the other side. All right. So my v sub null is equal to 15, still 15 on the other side. Negative 64 come over, become positive. So my initial velocity got to be 79. All right, feet per second. So this is probably one of the very few examples where we actually substitute, okay? Substitute numerical value for the unknown. All right, but this one that I skipped is saying without substitution, don't plug in any numbers, solve for the formula for the unknown, which is want me to find the other base C. All right, so I'm gonna kind of skip around here a little bit. All right, trying to find the easy one. All right, so let's do this one. So use your handout. Let's take a look at this particular one. You know the perimeter of a square is to be 21 meters. Find the length of one side. So as you can recall, perimeter of a square is P equal to 4 times the side. So this problem actually wants me to solve for the side, S. All right, so without substitution, so this is how it works. P equal to 4 times S. First thing I do is identify how many terms, which I only got 2 terms. All right, out of the so since I only have 2 terms, there's none of the 2 term has parentheses, so there's no distribution. There's no like term to combine on each side. So step number 4 from the last video, this is my variable term because this term contains the variable s. All right, since I only have two terms, one on each side, there's no like term to combine. So when there's nothing else to do, then the only thing we can do is divide both sides by the coefficient, which is 4, since s is the variable. I'm solving for s. So my side is going to equal to p over 4. Or you can write it as 1 over 4 times p. Okay, either way will work. All right, let's skip over this one for right now. I'm looking for problem that has two terms first, just like this one. This is circumference of a circle. All right, it says without substitution again, solve for the formula for the unknown. So find the radius. So this problem wants me to find the radius. That means c equal to 2 times pi times radius. I need to solve for r. All right, again, this whole entire equation only has two terms, one on the left, one on the right, because the right-hand side, there's no plus or minus sign outside the parenthesis. So this whole thing is one term. As a matter of fact, this got to be my variable term because the r is what I'm solving for. So if the r is the variable that make all the other factors inside the variable term the coefficient. So since there's nothing else to do, there's nothing to simplify, no like term to combine, no distribution, then all I'm going to do is divide both sides by my coefficient, 2 pi. So now my radius will simply be circumference c over 2 times pi. And the pi key on the Hawk's Learning is under the keypad. So on the top right-hand corner, when you know where you're supposed to enter your answers, look for the word keypad. Click on it and you can see the pi symbol. All right, let's look around. Let me make sure that's, oh, this one. This page, there you go. All right, National Bank advertise an interest rate in decimal form of 0.06 if your initial investment is $12.50 and you want to accumulate $600 in interest. How many years do you plan to invest? So this problem is looking for years, which is time. So this is something called the simple interest formula. I equal to principal times rate times time. I stand for interest. P stand for initial investment. R is your interest rate. Okay, and T stand for your time in years. Principal, interest. So this problem wants me to find out the time. So that means I need to solve for T. Interest equal to principal times rate times time, solving for T. All right, so again, this whole equation only has two terms, right? Because there's no plus sign or minus signs outside the parenthesis. So the whole right-hand side is one term, and that got to be my variable term because my variable, what I'm solving for, is T. So that make the P times R my coefficient within the variable term. So since I only got two terms and there's no like term to combine, there's no parentheses where I need to do distribution. So the only thing I can do is divide both sides by my coefficient, P times R. All right, so my time, T, is equal to interest divided by P times R. Okay, that's all it is to it. All right, that's how we solve these type of equations. All right, so this is the same formula, but the instruction is slightly different. The givens are a little bit different. He earned $900 after 8 years. If the amount invested was 1,000, so 1,000 is where the P is. Okay, 8 is the time, 900 is the I. Find the rate of interest. So this time you want me to solve for R, basically. So without any substitution, you do not need to substitute any number in here. All we're doing here is solving for a specific variable. So I equal to principal times rate times time. This time I'm going to solve for R. So again, this term on the right got to be my variable term because that term contains my variable R. If R is a variable, that means P and T got to be my coefficient. So since there's no like term to combine, there's no distributions need to be done, all I'm going to do is divide both sides by P times T, my coefficient. So my interest rate R can be determined by interest divided by principal times the time. All right. Now, this is the area formula for a parallelogram. Again, this is only two terms. What is the height? So this problem wants me to solve for the height, base times height. So I need to solve for h. So area equal to b times h. Solve for h. So again, this is only two terms. All right. And the BH got to be my variable term. So if H is the variable, that will make B the coefficient. So all I have to do is divide both sides by the coefficient B. All right, so my answer, my height is equal to area divided by the base. Okay, nothing hard when it comes to the equation only has two terms. All we need to do is divide both sides by the coefficient because there's really no like term to combine and the two term does not contain parentheses like some of the ones I skipped it. Okay, so let's go back to the one I kind of skipped. And I'm going to pick and choose, okay, so bear with me for a moment. So this is probably page 3 on your handouts. This formula, P equal to A plus B plus C, is referring to as the perimeter of a triangle. So again, without substitutions, let's solve for the third side C. So P equal to perimeter equal to side A plus side B plus side C, looking for C. So this time, all these on the right side of the equal sign, there's 2 plus sign outside the parentheses, so that's separate between three terms. A single letter variable P, by definition of a term, is a term. So none of these terms are like terms, so I cannot do any combine. All right, so before we move anybody, okay, let's take a look at who is my variable term, which is positive C. It's positive, I'm going to let it stay here. So that means I got to pick up my A, move over, and pick up my B and move it over. So my C, side C, is equal to that perimeter P is already there on the left side. When positive A come over, it become negative. When positive B come over to the left side, it become negative. So my side C is equal to P minus A minus B. Now, some students ask, well, Mr. Chen, why don't you subtract something on both sides, okay, or move anybody to the other side? Because all the one that I've done so far, this equation only has two terms. So if you only have two terms, one on each side, then the only thing you can do is divide both sides by the coefficient. You cannot say, with this example, to get h by itself, you cannot say, well, I'm going to subtract b on both sides, because that does not make sense, because subtracting b or plus something on both sides is basically the same as moving a term to the other side. But bh is only one object, one term, so you cannot. So if you need to move the b, the h actually is within that same object, same term. So the h got to go over. Okay. So when you only got two terms, one on each side, all you can really do is divide both sides by the coefficient. So why this one I subtract something on both sides or I move terms? Because the a and the positive b are two other terms that's on the same side with my variable term. So those objects got to be moved. Okay, so there's a difference between the equation has two terms, one on each side, or multiple terms. When you have multiple terms, that's when you have to move. All right, this formula is a perimeter of a rectangle. All right, the problem wants me to find the width. Okay, so I'm solving for W. So P equal to 2L plus 2W, solving for W. All right, let's take a look. On the plus sign, outside the parentheses, separate between two terms. So the other side, P is another term. So this whole equation has three terms. All right, none of the three terms has parentheses, so there's no distribution. These two terms on the right are not like terms, so I cannot combine them. So before I move anybody, let's find my variable term, which is positive 2W. It's positive, so I'm going to let it stay there. So that means I need to pick up positive 2L and move it over. So then that gives me 2W on the right, P still P on the left, positive 2L come over, becomes negative. So my W is not quite yet by itself, right? So what do I do from here? Well, normally the very last step, okay, is divide both sides by the coefficient. All right, because P and negative 2L are not like terms, I cannot combine these two. So since there's nothing else to combine and nothing else need to be moved, all right, so the very, very last step is got to be divided by the coefficient. Once there's nothing else to do, we got to divide by the coefficient. Since the left side still have two terms, here we will say divide every term by 2 instead. Both sides divided by 2. We will say every term divided by the coefficient. So then that will 2 over 2 give me 1W. So that will give me W equals P over 2 minus, okay, this is actually one term, right? That's within one term, I can reduce top and bottom. So 2 over 2 will cancel out. So that just leave me with minus L. All right. So remember now, this L is actually not in the bottom. It's actually on the numerator. Or we can write P over 2 as half P minus L this way. Okay, either way it will work. All right, so how come this previous problem, the perimeter of a triangle, I did not divide it by coefficient? Well, I kind of did because the coefficient in front of the C is 1. So if I say divide every term by 1, by a positive 1, my answer is not going to get affected. It's still going to be P minus A minus B. All righty, so let's go back to page number 2. All right. So I'm going to do this temperature one less, okay? So let's do this one. This, like I mentioned earlier, is the area of a trapezoid. So this time, this particular problem, this is page 2 on your handout, want me to find the height. All right, want me to solve for H. So let's see how we can do this. A equal to half times H times parenthesis B plus C. All right, when we were solving linear equation before, I tried to kind of review a little bit about how we can handle with fractions, okay, within the equation. So there are a couple different ways we can go about doing this, and there's a couple different ways we can say this. This whole entire right side of equal sign is actually one term because there's no plus sign or minus sign outside the parenthesis. All right. So this whole equation only consists of two terms. So my variable term, the term that contains my variable H, there is a half right in front of my variable. So to get rid of it, to get rid of this fraction, what I can do is multiply both terms by the reciprocal, which is 2 over 1, or you can say times by 2. And why do I want to do that? Because if I multiply both terms by the reciprocal, the 2 means 2 over 1. The top 2 and the bottom 2 will cancel out. So that will just leave me with h times b plus c. And the other side will become 2a. All right. So from here, okay, from here, think about this. H is my variable. All right. The half was one of my coefficients. Because if you really look at it, though, this is half times h times b plus c together viewed as one factor. So half and the b plus h is actually are my coefficients. So I just got rid of the half. So now to get h by itself, all I need to do again, since I only got 2 terms, is divide both sides by the coefficient b plus c on both sides. Because the b plus c and b plus c will cancel out, right? I can view it this way, but I can write it as just simply b plus c. So my h will be 2a over b plus c. Okay, so pretty neat. Thinking about b plus c, this is 2 terms, but I put them in the parenthesis, they become 1 term because now it's become times by 1. All right, so I can actually put the parenthesis right here. Okay, so the b plus c will cancel out. But so I can write b plus c here in the parenthesis. But when I write out my final answer, I can actually leave the parenthesis out. Okay, because it doesn't really make any difference to say 2a over parenthesis b plus c or just simply b plus c without the parenthesis. Still saying the same answer. So what's the big difference? Well, it's just the way how we look at them. When you see b plus c without parentheses, that's 2 separate terms. When you see them in the parentheses together, that's actually referring to as 1 term. Okay? So how come I did not distribute my h? Well, I didn't really need to because my h is already, my variable h is already separated from its coefficient. So I did not really have to do any distribution. Okay, there was no purpose for me to bring the b and the c to the outside the parenthesis. That's why here I just divide both sides by b plus c. Now, that's going to be different for this problem. All right, the very first one on your handout, this one is solving for c. So my variable c this time is actually trapped inside the parenthesis. Okay? So this is a little bit different, okay? I'm trapped inside the parentheses, so eventually I need to come out of my parentheses so I can get my variable c by itself. But the overall terms for the equation, the right side is still only 1 term. A is another term. So I can do exactly the same thing. Get rid of the fraction first by multiply both terms by the reciprocal, which is 2 over 1, or you can just write it as 2. Because now the 2 over 1, top 2, bottom 2 cancels out, so that just leave me with h times b plus c equal to 2 times a. Now from here, there are a couple ways we can go about doing. To bring the c to the outside the parenthesis, I can distribute my h. Okay? And then we can begin to move terms. Or there's actually another way, which is kind of strange. All right. Or, well, think about this. If I would distribute the h, right, I end up with hb plus hc. This is my variable term then. So eventually I will still need to divide both sides or divide every term by h. So rather than do it later, we can actually divide by h now. And I want to do it this way. So the h on the top and bottom cancels out. When they cancel out, it actually becomes a 1. And that 1 in front of the parenthesis do a distribution can also bring my B and positive C to the outside. Okay, so rather than do a distribution, if I would divide both sides by H, the H will cancel out, leave me with a 1. 1 do a distribution, also bring my B and the C to the outside. The other side now is 2A over H. So now with the plus sign on the outside of the parenthesis, the right side got 2 terms, the left side only has 1 term. Solving for C, so this is my variable term. It's positive, I'm going to let it stay. So move the positive B over. So my C is now equal to 2A over H. Positive B come over, becomes negative. Okay, I can do it this way. If I want to, let me just write this 2A equal to H times B plus C one more time. If I want to do the distribution way, if I want to go ahead and do my distribution and bring the B and the C to the outside, that will be HB plus H times C is equal to 2A. So now, plus sign outside the parentheses separate between 2 terms here. So my positive HC is my variable term. It's positive, let it stay. So move the HB over. So that gives me HC equal to 2A, still 2A. HB come over, become negative. So now there's no like term to combine. There's nothing else to do, right? There's no more distribution. So the very last step is always divided by the coefficient, which now I have an H in front of my C. So here we can say divide every term by H. So 2A over H is the first term on the left, still going to be 2A over H. This is actually 1 term. So within 1 term, I can reduce top with the bottom. So that leaves me with negative B. So you see the answer still the same as the other methods. So either way, I got to divide by H. So here I do it, here I do it early, and this way I do it at the very end. Still give me the same answer. All right, let's try this very last one. This is a temperature formula. What is the equivalent Fahrenheit? So this time it want me to solve for F. Okay, so Fahrenheit formula is very specific. Okay, so I'm going to purposely do a particular way. Solve for F. And most of the time, people see Fahrenheit formula a certain way. All right, so here we go. Solve for F, right? Again, I got 2 terms, just like my area of a trapezoid. This is a variable term, because this term contains my variable F. So I have a big old fraction up front. So what I'm going to do is multiply both terms by its reciprocal, 9 over 5. Because then, but top 9, bottom 9 cancels out. Top 5, bottom 5 cancels out. So the only thing I got left with is a 1. And this 1 can do a distribution to bring the F and the negative 32 to the outside the parenthesis. So the other side, we will simply say 9 over 5 times C. So now, with the subtraction sign outside the parenthesis, the right side got 2 terms. So F got to be the first term on the right side, which is also my variable term. So it's positive, let it stay there. So that means I move my negative 32 over. So my F now is equal to 9 over 5C. Negative 32 come over, it will become a positive. And that's my answer. Most of the time, people see Fahrenheit formula this way. All right. So in this lecture video, we talk about how to solve for a specific variable using a lot of different types of formulas. Okay. And there's and there are a couple different techniques based on how many terms you have. So when you only got 2 terms and involving with fraction, we can always times the reciprocal, okay, to get rid of the fraction. All right, that will conclude this lecture video. Thank you for watching.